Welcome to TrueStars Stories. Today, we're bringing you a powerful and emotional story filled with shocking twists. Black woman, CEO denied entry. She bought the whole hotel instead. Imagine this. A successful black woman CEO, wealthy, influential, and respected. Yet she's stopped at the door of a luxurious hotel simply because of prejudice and arrogance from the manager. The sneering looks, the harsh words, all meant to break her spirit. But instead she rose above the humiliation. In one bold move, she turned the tables completely, doing something so incredible it stunned everyone. She bought the entire hotel on the spot. This 8-chapter story will take you through every emotion, from outrage and curiosity to pure satisfaction and admiration. Trust me, you'll feel anger, joy, and amazement all at once. And you won't be able to look away until the very end. If you love dramatic, empowering, and inspiring stories like this, make sure to subscribe to TrueStars Stories today so you won't miss a single journey. Each new video promises to give you both entertainment and meaningful reflections that will stay with you long after. Dusk had just settled, and the city center glowed like a festival of lights. Towering skyscrapers shimmered against the damp streets, still glistening from the rain. A sleek black limousine rolled slowly to a stop in front of the grand entrance of one of the city's most luxurious 5-star hotels. The golden sign above the doorway sparkled with extravagance, as if to declare that only the elite were welcome here. Out stepped a woman radiating authority. Her tailored designer dress hugged her figure, her stiletto heels clicked against the marble steps, and her piercing gaze made heads turn instantly. She was Alicia Morgan, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech empire, known for her sharp intellect and unyielding strength. As the car door closed, Alicia took a deep breath. She wasn't here to flaunt her wealth or power. She simply came to attend an exclusive business gala hosted at the hotel, a gathering of top investors, entrepreneurs, and politicians. It was an opportunity to expand connections and secure critical deals. But just as Alicia climbed the marble steps, a curt voice cut through the evening air. "Sorry, but you can't come in." She froze mid-step. A hotel manager in a pristine uniform blocked her way. His eyes swept over her from head to toe, arms folded as if she were out of place. Alicia arched a brow and offered a mocking smile. "Excuse me? Did you just say I can't come in? This is a public hotel, and I have an invitation to tonight's event." The manager shrugged, lowering his voice but not his condescension. "You must be mistaken. Tonight's event is reserved for appropriate guests. I'm afraid you might not feel comfortable here." "Not comfortable?" Alicia blinked, then the meaning struck like lightning. Her chest tightened with anger she refused to show. This wasn't the first time she had faced such prejudice. The stares, the insinuations, but hearing it here, publicly, in front of so many people, stung like never before. Around her, elegantly dressed guests passed by, whispering, glancing, some smirking. Each look pricked her pride like a needle. Instead of exploding, Alicia inhaled deeply. She gave a soft smile, one that unsettled her opponent. "Thank you for your concern. But I'll be just fine." The manager held his ground, stiff and unyielding. The air thickened, ready to snap. And in that moment, Alicia realized, tonight would not be just another gala. It would be the start of something the whole city would never forget. The atmosphere in the hotel lobby grew heavier, suffocating with tension. The glittering crystal chandelier above only made the spotlight on Alicia burn brighter. She stood tall and regal, while the manager remained planted in front of her, like a wall built solely to humiliate. A middle-aged couple walked by. The wife glanced at Alicia, smirked, and whispered to her husband, "See? She's obviously in the wrong place." The husband chuckled softly, shaking his head as if pitying her, then continued inside without another word. In that instant, Alicia felt her blood boiling. She could have shouted, flashed her invitation, and caused a scene. But doing so would only fuel the stereotype, making her look like the angry black woman they already assumed she was. Instead, Alicia calmly pulled out the embossed invitation, the hotel's logo shimmering under the lights. Holding it up to the manager's face, her voice was cool but sharp as a blade. "This is an official invitation. Are you certain you want to keep standing in my way?" The manager faltered, momentarily shaken, then straightened his posture with feigned confidence. Clearing his throat, he replied, "There must be some mistake. Perhaps the invitation wasn't meant for you. In any case, I am responsible for protecting the image of this hotel." His words struck like a slap across her face. The implication was clear. No matter her title, no matter her billions, someone like her still wasn't worthy of walking through those doors. A group of wealthy young men passing by overheard and burst into laughter. One of them sneered, "Maybe she's here to apply for a job instead." Their laughter echoed beneath the chandelier, cutting into Alicia's pride like 100 sharp blades. But instead of crumbling, her eyes turned icy cold. In that very moment, she realized, sometimes humiliation is the perfect stage to prove true power. Alicia tilted her head slightly, her lips curling into a mysterious smile. Deep inside, a daring plan was already taking shape. A young receptionist at the front desk shifted uneasily, his eyes darting toward Alicia. He clearly recognized her from business magazines and financial news, but he dared not interfere. The manager was infamous for being arrogant, always flexing his authority, especially against anyone he deemed unfit for the hotel's image, Alicia noticed. The silence from the bystanders weighed heavily on her. Everyone saw the injustice, yet no one spoke up. They simply watched, as if enjoying a free play unfolding before them. She slowly turned, letting her gaze sweep across the opulent lobby. Marble walls, massive oil paintings, crimson velvet carpets. Every detail screamed wealth and power, yet all of it was run by such a petty, outdated mindset. The irony was almost cruel. Memories flooded back. Alicia remembered being a little girl, watching her mother refuse service at a restaurant because of her skin color. She had whispered to herself then, "One day, I'll stand in a place where no one can ever block my path." And now, here she was, reliving that moment. But this time, she was no helpless child. The manager tilted his chin smugly, trying to assert victory. "You must understand, this place has a standard to uphold." "I'm only doing my job." His words poured fuel on the fire. Alicia let out a soft, cutting laugh. The sound echoed under the chandelier, sharp enough to make curious guests glance her way. She leaned in closer to the manager, voice low and razor-sharp. "Standards, huh? How interesting. Because in just a few hours, you'll be calling me Madam Owner." The manager's eyes widened, but before he could respond, Alicia turned on her heel and strode out. Her confident steps left a ripple of stunned silence in the lobby. Whispers erupted. "Madam Owner? What did she mean by that? Is she serious?" No one knew for certain. Only Alicia understood. The decision forming in her mind would change the course of the entire night. If necessary, she would rewrite the history of that hotel, just to prove no one had the power to stop her. As she stepped outside, the night breeze brushed against her skin, carrying a cool calmness. Alicia paused, her gaze fixed on the dazzling lights reflecting off the hotel behind her. Her heart pounded, not from humiliation, but from the fire igniting within. Her personal assistant hurried over, worry etched across his face. "Ms. Morgan, what happened? I heard—" There was some commotion in the lobby. Alicia smiled faintly, a smile both proud and mysterious. Her words came slow, deliberate, each one weighted with intent. "Nothing at all. I just decided I'm going to buy this place." The assistant's eyes widened, stunned. For a moment he thought he had misheard, but the calm determination in Alicia's eyes told him she was dead serious. In her mind, the plan was already crystal clear. She had the resources, the connections, and most importantly, the resolve to make it happen. This hotel was not just a lavish building, it would become a symbol of a lesson. No one defines her worth but herself. As she slipped into the limousine, her voice carried a biting mix of sarcasm and challenge. "They want to protect their standards? Fine, I'll show them what true standards look like." The car door shut, and the limousine disappeared into the stream of city traffic. Inside the hotel, the whispers hadn't stopped. No one knew what was about to unfold, but everyone sensed a storm was brewing. From that very moment, the night's story was no longer just about a gala. It was the beginning of an upheaval that would leave everyone in shock. The next morning, sunlight poured through the wide glass windows of Alicia's luxurious penthouse. The room was quiet, with only the soft hum of jazz music playing from a speaker in the corner. But inside her mind, there was no peace. She sat at her walnut desk, staring at a screen filled with numbers and financial reports. She hadn't slept much, but her eyes glowed with an uncommon determination. Reaching for her phone, she dialed her longtime financial advisor, Mr. Harris, an older man with silver hair but a mind as sharp as a blade. His voice was groggy when he answered. "Hello. Alicia? What's going on so early?" Alicia didn't waste time. "I need the current financials on the Grand Imperial Hotel. Can you get me everything within the hour?" On the other end, silence hung for a moment. Then Harris let out a low chuckle, tinged with curiosity. "You're planning something again, aren't you? Grand Imperial isn't a small deal. You know it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars?" Alicia's lips curved, her voice cutting like steel. "Exactly. And I want to know if it's worth acquiring immediately." There was another pause, heavier this time. Then Harris's tone dropped, serious and steady. "All right, you'll have the full report in an hour. But Alicia, I have a feeling this isn't just about buying a hotel. You're gearing up for a war." Alicia smiled faintly. It wasn't the smile of someone being impulsive. It was the smile of a warrior who had already chosen her battlefield. Exactly 1 hour later, Alicia's desk was piled high with thick reports from Harris. Financial charts, profit and loss statements, lists of bad debts, all laid bare the true condition of the Grand Imperial. She flipped through the pages, her gaze sharp as a laser. Every number, every graph, etched itself into her mind. Slowly a smile spread across her lips. The Grand Imperial, for all its grandeur, was drowning in debt from poor management. Revenues had been slipping, customers were complaining, and shareholders were growing impatient. In other words, it was a fat prey waiting for the right hunter. Across from her, Harris sipped his tea, watching her closely. Finally, he nodded. "You see it too, don't you? They're teetering on the edge of crisis. A regular CEO would stay far away from this deal, but you're different." Alicia tapped her fingers lightly on the desk, her eyes gleaming with resolve. "That hotel humiliated me in front of dozens of people. If I buy it, it won't just be a deal. It will be a statement that no one has the right to bar me from any door." Harris gave a dry chuckle, admiration flickering in his eyes. "You really haven't changed. Still fearless Alicia Morgan. But remember, buying the Grand Imperial isn't just about money. You'll need strategy. The shareholders won't surrender easily." Alicia leaned forward, her voice firm and unshakable. "Then I'll show them. I'm not just wealthy, I have vision. And I'll turn the Grand Imperial into a symbol of fairness and true class." The room fell silent for a few seconds, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. In that pause, both of them understood. Alicia wasn't merely planning to buy a hotel. She was preparing to rewrite the rules that had always belonged to the powerful. That afternoon, Alicia called a private meeting at the company's headquarters. The boardroom sat on the top floor, with glass walls offering a sweeping view of the bustling city below. On the long walnut table, laptops glowed and stacks of documents were neatly arranged, waiting for the power players to arrive. The executives filed in one by one. They were veterans, used to multi-billion-dollar deals, yet curiosity flickered in their eyes at Alicia's sudden summons. When everyone was seated, Alicia entered. Her posture was straight, her expression calm, but her eyes burned with determination. She wasted no time, pulling up a report on the large screen. "This is the financial status of the Grand Imperial Hotel, once a symbol of luxury, now sinking?" Murmurs rippled across the room. One investment director frowned. "That hotel is too risky. We have better opportunities elsewhere. Why aim for a sinking ship?" Alicia stepped closer to the screen, her voice clear and deliberate, every word sharp. "Because it's sinking, we have the chance. And more importantly, this isn't just an investment. This is a chance to show that outdated values, prejudice, arrogance, come with a price." The room fell silent. A younger executive finally spoke up. "Are you turning this into a business deal? Or a personal battle?" Alicia turned, her gaze icy but her voice softened. Both. And I believe if we succeed, the Grand Imperial won't just be a hotel. It will be proof that fairness and class can stand side by side. Her words hung in the air, leaving a heavy silence. Everyone knew one thing for certain: Alicia never backed down. Once she chose a target, nothing could stop her. After Alicia's bold declaration, the air in the boardroom grew heavy enough to cut with a knife. The executives exchanged glances, some frowning with concern, others showing a spark of excitement at the challenge ahead. Harris, who had remained silent until now, finally set his teacup down. He tapped his fingers lightly and spoke in a low but resonant tone. "You may have doubts, but I've worked with Alicia for years, and let me tell you this. When she sees opportunity in chaos, that's always the best time to invest." Another wave of murmurs swept the room. Eyes that once held suspicion now softened into consideration. At the head of the table, Alicia stood tall, the lights catching her features and amplifying her regal presence. She continued, her voice strong and unwavering. "I'm not here to force anyone, but I need those willing to fight. The Grand Imperial is more than a hotel. It will be our declaration of change. Who's ready to step into this game with me?" Hands hesitated at first, then one by one, nods appeared. The marketing director spoke up. "I'm in. We can turn the Grand Imperial's image into something the world has never seen." Then the strategy director added, "If you believe you can turn this around, then I believe too. Count me in." The atmosphere shifted. Doubt gave way to a new energy, a thrill for challenge and opportunity. Alicia allowed herself a small smile, her eyes flashing like sparks. "Good. From this moment forward, we begin. I want a detailed plan within 48 hours. The Grand Imperial won't know what just hit them." For a beat, the room went silent. Then it erupted with the sound of typing, urgent conversations, and quick calculations. The battle had officially begun. 2 days later, Alicia's office buzzed like a military command center. Giant screens displayed financial charts, market analyses, and detailed intel on the Grand Imperial. Teams of analysts rushed to report, phones rang non-stop, and the air was charged with urgency. Alicia stood before a massive strategy board covering an entire wall, plastered with color-coded notes, bank debts, shareholder percentages, key stakeholders, partner companies. Every detail was a piece of a puzzle she was determined to solve. "We start with their weakest point. The shareholders are losing patience," Alicia declared firmly. "Target the dissatisfied ones first. If they sell their shares, we gain immediate leverage in the boardroom." The finance director interjected, "But if word leaks out, they'll raise the price. That could make the acquisition far more complicated." Alicia's lips curved into a sharp smile. "Then we move faster than the rumors. Sometimes speed is the greatest weapon." A ripple of soft laughter moved across the room, followed by the sound of furious typing. Alicia walked to the window, gazing out over the city. In the afternoon glow, the Grand Imperial towered in the distance, a fortress of arrogance daring her to try. In her mind, the manager's disdainful words echoed, "You don't belong here." Her fist clenched, and she whispered, "Fine, then I'll make it mine." That evening, in a private upscale restaurant, Alicia met discreetly with one of the Grand Imperial's biggest shareholders, Mrs. Evelyn Turner. Evelyn was a seasoned businesswoman, known for her ruthless pragmatism, holding nearly 15% of the hotel's shares. The private room glowed with soft candlelight, a vase of red roses in the center adding to the tension. Evelyn sat waiting, her face cold, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. When Alicia entered, she raised an eyebrow and spoke in a challenging tone. "I hear you're trying to take over the Grand Imperial." "A dangerous game." Alicia sat down, calm and smiling. "Games are only dangerous for those who don't know how to win." Evelyn chuckled softly, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. Setting down her wineglass, she cut straight to the point. "So why should I sell my shares to you? Do you really think you can make me change my mind?" Alicia leaned forward, her voice low but weighted with force. "Because you and I both know this hotel is declining. Its value will plummet if they continue with their current management. I'm offering you a dignified exit. Sell your shares now, while they're still worth something." Evelyn was silent, swirling her wine. Alicia pressed on, her eyes blazing. And not just that. I promise when I take over the Grand Imperial, you'll still have a place on the advisory board. You won't lose power. You'll stand with me in a new era. For a few long seconds, the only sound was faint piano music drifting in from the main hall. Then Evelyn finally smirked, curiosity glinting in her eyes. You're not like any CEO I've met before. Very well, Alicia. I'll think about it. Alicia leaned back, her smile soft but sharp as a blade. You can think about it, but remember, I don't knock twice. The next morning, a message from Alicia's personal lawyer popped up on her phone. It was brief, but enough to make her smile with satisfaction. Mrs. Turner has agreed to sell 10% of her shares to us. The contract is being drafted. Alicia set the phone down, her eyes glowing. This was the first step, a crucial brick in her takeover plan for the Grand Imperial. Harris entered with a steaming cup of coffee. Noticing Alicia's smile, he guessed instantly, "Good news?" Alicia nodded. "Evelyn Turner is leaning our way. I told you, when a ship is sinking, everyone wants to be the first to escape." Harris chuckled softly, though concern still lingered in his eyes. "True, but don't forget, the remaining shareholders won't budge so easily, especially the chairman of the board, Richard Hale. That man is notoriously stubborn, and he'll fight to the bitter end to keep the Grand Imperial." Alicia rose from her chair and walked to the window, gazing at the bustling streets below. Her voice was low but laced with challenge. "Then it will be even more interesting. A man like him will never embrace change, which is why I'll make sure he witnesses it with his own eyes. The Grand Imperial will have a new owner." Outside, the city skyline stretched against a bright blue sky, towers rising like watchful sentinels. But to Alicia, it was a battlefield opening wide, and she, the woman once barred from its doors, had just taken her first steps toward owning it. That afternoon, in the Grand Imperial's boardroom, tension ran high. Rumors of a black woman CEO plotting to take over the hotel spread like wildfire through the halls. Whispers buzzed, but everyone knew one thing. Richard Hale, the chairman, would not stand idly by. Richard entered, clad in a pinstripe gray suit, his silver hair slicked back with precision. He was infamous as an old fox, loyal to the Grand Imperial for over 3 decades. Dropping a stack of documents onto the table with a sharp thud, he growled, "Does anyone here truly believe we'll let an outsider, a woman who knows nothing of the hospitality business, steal this legacy from us?" The room fell into dead silence. Some shareholders avoided eye contact, others nodded in agreement. Richard pressed on, his gaze icy. "The Grand Imperial is a symbol of class. I will not allow it to fall into the hands of someone who only sees it as a tool for personal revenge." Just then, an assistant leaned in close to whisper urgent news. "Mr. Hale, it's confirmed. Mrs. Evelyn Turner has agreed to sell part of her shares to Alicia Morgan." Richard froze, his eyes blazing with fury. His grip tightened on the armrest as his voice dropped, dangerously calm. "Then we have a traitor in our ranks. If Alicia Morgan thinks she can walk in here so easily, she's gravely mistaken. This will be a war, and I do not lose." Across town, Alicia stood on her penthouse balcony, the evening wind tugging at her hair. She gazed toward the Grand Imperial, her expression serene but burning with fire. 2 people. 2 worlds, and an inevitable clash had just begun. 2 days later, Alicia's office buzzed like a military command center. Giant screens displayed financial charts, market analyses, and detailed intel on the Grand Imperial. Teams of analysts rushed to report, phones rang non-stop, and the air was charged with urgency. Alicia stood before a massive strategy board covering an entire wall, plastered with color-coded notes, bank debts, shareholder percentages, key stakeholders, partner companies. Every detail was a piece of a puzzle she was determined to solve. "We start with their weakest point. The shareholders are losing patience," Alicia declared firmly. "Target the dissatisfied ones first. If they sell their shares, we gain immediate leverage in the boardroom." The finance director interjected, "But if word leaks out, they'll raise the price. That could make the acquisition far more complicated." Alicia's lips curved into a sharp smile. Then we move faster than the rumors. Sometimes speed is the greatest weapon. A ripple of soft laughter moved across the room, followed by the sound of furious typing. Alicia walked to the window, gazing out over the city. In the afternoon glow, the Grand Imperial towered in the distance, a fortress of arrogance daring her to try. In her mind, the manager's disdainful words echoed, "You don't belong here." Her fist clenched, and she whispered, "Fine, then I'll make it mine." That evening, in a private upscale restaurant, Alicia met discreetly with one of the Grand Imperial's biggest shareholders, Mrs. Evelyn Turner. Evelyn was a seasoned businesswoman, known for her ruthless pragmatism, holding nearly 15% of the hotel's shares. The private room glowed with soft candlelight, a vase of red roses in the center adding to the tension. Evelyn sat waiting, her face cold, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. When Alicia entered, she raised an eyebrow and spoke in a challenging tone. "I hear you're trying to take over the Grand Imperial." "A dangerous game." Alicia sat down, calm and smiling. "Games are only dangerous for those who don't know how to win." Evelyn chuckled softly, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. Setting down her wineglass, she cut straight to the point. "So why should I sell my shares to you? Do you really think you can make me change my mind?" Alicia leaned forward, her voice low but weighted with force. "Because you and I both know this hotel is declining. Its value will plummet if they continue with their current management. I'm offering you a dignified exit. Sell your shares now, while they're still worth something." Evelyn was silent, swirling her wine. Alicia pressed on, her eyes blazing. "And not just that. I promise when I take over the Grand Imperial, you'll still have a place on the advisory board. You won't lose power. You'll stand with me in a new era." For a few long seconds, the only sound was faint piano music drifting in from the main hall. Then Evelyn finally smirked, curiosity glinting in her eyes. "You're not like any CEO I've met before." "Very well, Alicia. I'll think about it." Alicia leaned back, her smile soft but sharp as a blade. "You can think about it, but remember, I don't knock twice." The next morning, a message from Alicia's personal lawyer popped up on her phone. It was brief, but enough to make her smile with satisfaction. "Mrs. Turner has agreed to sell 10% of her shares to us. The contract is being drafted." Alicia set the phone down, her eyes glowing. This was the first step, a crucial brick in her takeover plan for the Grand Imperial. Harris entered with a steaming cup of coffee. Noticing Alicia's smile, he guessed instantly, "Good news?" Alicia nodded. "Evelyn Turner is leaning our way." "I told you. When a ship is sinking, everyone wants to be the first to escape." Harris chuckled softly, though concern still lingered in his eyes. "True, but don't forget, the remaining shareholders won't budge so easily, especially the chairman of the board, Richard Hale. That man is notoriously stubborn, and he'll fight to the bitter end to keep the Grand Imperial." Alicia rose from her chair and walked to the window, gazing at the bustling streets below. Her voice was low but laced with challenge. "Then it will be even more interesting. A man like him will never embrace change, which is why I'll make sure he witnesses it with his own eyes. The Grand Imperial will have a new owner." Outside, the city skyline stretched against a bright blue sky, towers rising like watchful sentinels. But to Alicia, it was a battlefield opening wide, and she, the woman once barred from its doors, had just taken her first steps toward owning it. That afternoon, in the Grand Imperial's boardroom, tension ran high. Rumors of a black woman CEO plotting to take over the hotel spread like wildfire through the halls. Whispers buzzed, but everyone knew one thing. Richard Hale, the chairman, would not stand idly by. Richard entered, clad in a pinstripe gray suit, his silver hair slicked back with precision. He was infamous as an old fox, loyal to the Grand Imperial for over 3 decades. Dropping a stack of documents onto the table with a sharp thud, he growled, "Does anyone here truly believe we'll let an outsider, a woman who knows nothing of the hospitality business, steal this legacy from us?" The room fell into dead silence. Some shareholders avoided eye contact, others nodded in agreement. Richard pressed on, his gaze icy. "The Grand Imperial is a symbol of class. I will not allow it to fall into the hands of someone who only sees it as a tool for personal revenge. Just then, an assistant leaned in close to whisper urgent news. Mr. Hale, it's confirmed. Mrs. Evelyn Turner has agreed to sell part of her shares to Alicia Morgan. Richard froze, his eyes blazing with fury. His grip tightened on the armrest as his voice dropped, dangerously calm. Then we have a traitor in our ranks. If Alicia Morgan thinks she can walk in here so easily, she's gravely mistaken. This will be a war, and I do not lose. Across town, Alicia stood on her penthouse balcony, the evening wind tugging at her hair. She gazed toward the Grand Imperial, her expression serene but burning with fire. Two people, two worlds, and an inevitable clash had just begun. News of the fiery clash at the Grand Imperial spread like wildfire. The next morning, major financial papers screamed headlines. Black woman CEO Alicia Morgan challenges the Grand Imperial. Power struggle, Richard Hale versus tech billionaire. The whole city buzzed. Some admired Alicia's boldness, hailing her as a symbol of strength and change. Others mocked her, calling her reckless for daring to challenge Richard, a man who had ruled the hotel for over 30 years. In her penthouse office, Alicia stood before a massive screen, scanning the articles. Beside her, Harris sipped his coffee, sighing. You're the center of attention now. That's both an advantage and a double-edged sword. If you fail, they'll call you arrogant. Alicia smiled faintly, her eyes blazing. Then I have no choice but to win. She turned to her team, her voice commanding, launch the media campaign. I want the public to see that the Grand Imperial has lost the essence of hospitality. Expose the truths Richard has been hiding. Interview former guests if needed. Gather evidence of poor experiences. I want it all out in the open. A young assistant hesitated, speaking carefully. But that could be seen as a direct attack. It might push Richard to strike back harder. Alicia's smile sharpened. Exactly. And when he strikes back, I'll have the perfect chance to land the decisive blow. The team exchanged glances, their faces lit with a mix of thrill and nerves. They all understood. Alicia wasn't just a CEO trying to buy a hotel. She was a warrior, ready to ignite a public battle. 2 days later, the storm truly began. On social media, a flood of short videos appeared. Former guests of the Grand Imperial speaking openly about their terrible experiences. A middle-aged woman spoke bitterly. I booked a luxury suite for my 20th wedding anniversary, but when we arrived, they treated us like beggars. The room was filthy, the staff arrogant. I've never felt so humiliated, a young businessman added angrily. I was denied service because I didn't look classy enough. They even told me I must have confused the hotel with somewhere else. It was the worst experience of my life. The clips spread like wildfire, tagged with Corsker True Hospitality and Grand Imperial Truth, a campaign Alicia's team had crafted with precision. Within 24 hours, millions of views and tens of thousands of comments poured in, most condemning the Grand Imperial for arrogance and discrimination. In her office, Alicia watched the screen displaying public sentiment metrics. The red graph spiked upward. The hotel's reputation was in free fall. Harris stood beside her, half impressed, half worried. You've struck their weakest nerve. But Richard won't sit quietly. Alicia folded her arms, eyes blazing. I'm counting on him to react, because only when he loses control will I deliver the final blow. Meanwhile, across town in a dark office, Richard slammed a newspaper onto his desk. His face flushed with rage as he roared, Enough! I won't let an outsider destroy the honor of the Grand Imperial. Prepare a press conference immediately. I'll make Alicia Morgan regret this. The media war had officially erupted, and this time it wasn't hidden behind closed doors. It was unfolding under the gaze of millions. The next day, the Grand Imperial's Grand Hall was packed with reporters. Camera flashes went off in rapid bursts, questions shouted from every direction. On stage, Richard Hale appeared, dressed sharply in a gray suit, his forced smile barely masking the anger simmering beneath. He raised a hand for silence. The Grand Imperial has stood for over 70 years as a symbol of luxury and class. The recent rumors and accusations are baseless, designed only to damage our reputation. We do not discriminate against anyone. A reporter immediately pressed him. "Mr. Hale, how do you explain the hundreds of negative reviews online over the past 6 months? And the viral videos of guests claiming arrogant treatment by your staff?" Richard hesitated briefly, then snapped back, his tone sharper. "Those are isolated cases. Every hotel has a few complaints. You can't judge the Grand Imperial by a handful of opinions." Murmurs rippled through the press. Pen scribbled furiously. Another reporter asked, "There are rumors that Mrs. Alicia Morgan is buying shares in the hotel. Can you confirm this?" Richard narrowed his eyes and smirked. "Yes, she has her schemes. But let me be clear. Mrs. Morgan knows nothing about hospitality. She's just an arrogant outsider who thinks money can buy everything. The Grand Imperial will never belong to someone like her." The words had barely left his lips before the hall erupted in murmurs. Cameras caught every frame. Within minutes, his statement flooded social media. And just as Alicia had predicted, the public exploded with outrage. Comments poured in. "Someone like her? Did he really say that? This is the arrogance Alicia warned us about." Exactly. It's time the Grand Imperial changed. In her penthouse, Alicia sat quietly before the screen, lips curving upward. Her eyes glowed with satisfaction, as if watching her rival walk straight into the trap she had laid. Just hours after Richard's press conference, Alicia appeared on a major financial news network. The studio lights blazed and millions of viewers tuned in. The host opened. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we welcome Mrs. Alicia Morgan, the woman shaking the city with her plan to acquire the Grand Imperial. Mrs. Morgan, how do you respond to Richard Hale's comment earlier today that the Grand Imperial will never belong to someone like you?" Alicia sat tall in her pristine white suit, her face composed, her eyes blazing. She smiled softly before speaking, her words striking like hammers. "He's right. I am an outsider. I don't belong to the outdated rules or the old mindset that have dragged the Grand Imperial down. But let me be clear. If someone like me means a black woman who built a billion-dollar empire through intelligence and perseverance, then I am proud to be that kind of person." Applause erupted in the studio, cheers filling the air. The host nodded, visibly impressed. Alicia went on, her voice stronger now. "The Grand Imperial doesn't belong to one man or one class of people. It belongs to those who value their guests and respect human dignity. And I promise you this, if I become its owner, the Grand Imperial will be a place where everyone is welcomed with absolute respect." Immediately, clips of her speech went viral. The hashtag "Proud to be that kind" exploded online, shared by millions with admiration. Meanwhile, Richard faced a tidal wave of backlash for his blatantly discriminatory remark. That evening, Alicia stood on her penthouse balcony, gazing at the glittering city below. Harris stood beside her, smiling faintly. "You just turned an insult into your strongest weapon." Alicia raised her glass of wine, her eyes sharp yet proud. "Yes, and this is only the beginning." 1 week after her explosive interview, Alicia launched Phase 2 of her plan, a direct offensive on the shareholders. In a private conference room at the city's financial hub, familiar faces from the investment world gathered. They had once been cautious about the name Alicia Morgan, but after her stunning rebuttal on live television, their eyes on her now carried both respect and curiosity. Alicia opened her laptop, projecting charts onto the big screen. Her voice rang out, clear and commanding. "You've all seen it. The Grand Imperial is on the brink. But crisis is not the end. It is opportunity. I'm not here just to buy shares. I'm here to rebirth a brand." One major shareholder leaned forward with a wary look. "And what do you promise to those who stand with you?" "Because siding with you means going head-to-head with Richard Hale." Alicia paused briefly, sweeping her gaze across the room, then replied firmly, "I promise this. Your shares will triple in value within 3 years. Not by empty words, but by a detailed plan. I have the capital, I have the technology, and I have the vision. The Grand Imperial won't just be a hotel. It will be a global brand." Murmurs spread across the room. Faces lit up with both greed and hope. A few subtle nods appeared. Alicia knew she had struck at their greatest weakness, their hunger for profit. From the far end of the table, Harris observed quietly, In his aging eyes flickered pride. He understood now that Alicia was no longer just a woman reclaiming her dignity. She was standing at the threshold of becoming a legend. In the following days, Alicia barely had a moment to rest. She moved constantly between private meetings, secret dinners, and discreet encounters with key shareholders. At a small Italian restaurant, she sat with Mr. Patrick, who held 8% of shares, known for being stubborn and hard to sway. Patrick leaned back, arms crossed, eyes scrutinizing her. "Mrs. Morgan, you're young, brilliant, but I'm not easily convinced. Richard may be stubborn, but he's kept this ship afloat for 30 years. How do you prove you're better than him?" Alicia sipped her wine and smiled with quiet confidence. "By looking to the future instead of clinging to the past. Richard may have kept the ship afloat for 30 years, but he doesn't see it's already sinking. I'm different. I won't just keep it afloat, I'll turn it into a yacht." Patrick chuckled, though his eyes softened. After a long look at her, he finally gave a small nod. "I'll think about it. At least you have a vision Richard no longer does." At another meeting, Alicia chose a quiet cafe where Mrs. Monica, the only female shareholder, waited. Monica was known for staying out of conflicts. Alicia began gently, "I know you dislike confrontation, but you must also see the truth. This hotel no longer represents hospitality. It's become a symbol of arrogance. Don't you want to restore it to what it was meant to be?" Monica studied Alicia, her eyes softening. She whispered, "Can you really do that?" Alicia placed her hand firmly on the table. "It's not about whether I can. I will." Monica stayed silent for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. Piece by piece, Alicia was pulling shareholders into her orbit. And across town, Richard began hearing whispers that even his most loyal allies were starting to waver. In Richard's grand office at the Grand Imperial, the air was taut as a drawn bowstring. He paced back and forth, his heavy steps thudding against the polished wood floor. On his desk lay piles of internal reports, memos, messages, even rumors, all pointing to one truth: several key shareholders were secretly meeting with Alicia Morgan. Richard clenched the folder in his fist, then hurled it onto the desk in fury. "Traitors, every last one of them." A young assistant tried to soothe him, voice trembling. "Sir, perhaps they're just listening to Mrs. Morgan's proposals." "It doesn't mean they've—" Richard roared, cutting him off. "Doesn't mean? I know they're kind. They smell money and instantly turn their backs. After all these years I've held the Grand Imperial together, they dare waver for an outsider woman." He slammed his palm onto the desk, then collapsed into his chair, panting. His face was flushed red with anger, but deep in his eyes flickered a glint of fear he refused to admit. After a long silence, he ground out his words. "Fine. If Alicia Morgan wants war, I'll give her war. Prepare a counterstrike. Buy back the weak shares before she can. Use every resource, even short-term loans." "I don't care," the assistant hesitated. "But sir, the hotel's debt is already too heavy. If we borrow more, we'll—" Richard's glare cut like ice. "I said buy. The Grand Imperial is mine, and it always will be." In the dim room, Richard's shadow loomed against the wall like that of a wounded beast, desperate, raging, clawing to keep hold of a kingdom slipping through his grasp. While Richard scrambled to buy back shares with desperate short-term loans, the financial markets quickly caught the scent of instability. The Grand Imperial stock, once steady, suddenly swung wildly. On a bustling trading floor, investors buzzed, Hale's buying shares like a madman. What's going on inside the Grand Imperial? A company drowning in debt, yet he's still grabbing more stock? Dangerous. This could be a sign of collapse. The news spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed across financial outlets. Richard Hale, desperate, Grand Imperial faces financial crisis. In her penthouse office, Alicia and her team tracked the plunging numbers on the big screen. The downward curve drew gasps. Harris nodded slowly, his eyes mixing surprise with admiration. He's burying himself. Once the shareholders see Richard recklessly taking on more debt, their trust will shatter. And when trust crumbles, they'll turn to you. Alicia folded her arms, her gaze sharp. Exactly as I planned. Richard thinks he's counterattacking, but really, he's doing my work for me, driving the shareholders into my hands faster. Outside the glass windows, the city glowed like a sea of lights. In Alicia's eyes, it was the glow of a victory taking shape. She turned back to her team, her voice ringing with resolve. Prepare everything. It's time for us to strike the decisive blow. The harder Richard struggled, the deeper the Grand Imperial sank. And across the battlefield, Alicia knew she now held the greatest advantage yet. On Monday morning, the city's largest trading floor buzzed with a single story, the Grand Imperial. Every screen flashed the hotel's stock price plunging. Investors swarmed like bees, all predicting when Richard Hale would finally collapse. In her penthouse office, Alicia sat surrounded by her advisors. On the table lay stacks of share purchase contracts, neatly arranged, waiting only for her signature. The room pulsed with tension, anticipation, and resolve. Harris handed her a folder, his calm tone barely concealing excitement. With Mrs. Monica and Mr. Patrick agreeing to sell, plus the smaller stakes we've accumulated, you now control 32%. Alicia skimmed the numbers, then smiled proudly. Enough to stand as Richard's equal, and just a few more points. We'll hold the dominant voice on the board. A young assistant interjected, trembling with excitement. The public is behind you. After your TV appearance, the hashtag Sabiam proud to be that kind is still trending at #1. People see you as the symbol of change. Alicia nodded, her eyes alight. Yes, but public opinion is only pressure. What I need is real power, and that means shares. She rose, walked to the window, and looked out at the Grand Imperial towering in the distance like an ancient fortress cracking at the seams. Her voice filled the room, sharp and decisive. Get ready. Today we launch a full assault. Richard Hale won't see it coming. That afternoon, a secret meeting was held in another upscale hotel just a few blocks from the Grand Imperial. Alicia entered the discreet suite where 3 key shareholders awaited: Mr. Lewis with 7%, Mrs. Grant with 6%, and Mr. Ortiz with 5%. They were the deciding pieces, the ones who could tip the scales entirely. The atmosphere was tense. Lewis spoke first, skeptical. Mrs. Morgan, we know you've swayed a few people. But Richard Hale has dedicated his life to the Grand Imperial. Why should we turn our backs on him now? Alicia sat calmly, opening her case and sliding a folder across the table. Inside were detailed reports of mounting debts and forecasts of collapse if nothing changed. Because if you cling to him, you'll lose everything. I'm not here to beg for loyalty. I'm here to give you an exit and a future far more profitable. Mrs. Grant frowned. But how? This hotel is outdated, the brand is fading. Replacing the CEO won't magically fix that. Alicia smiled, her voice lowering, confident as if she were painting their future before their eyes. I'll turn the Grand Imperial into the symbol of modern hospitality. AI-driven customer experiences, a global booking system with expansions in world capitals, and most importantly, I'll restore its reputation by putting respect for people back at the center. Ortiz, silent until now, finally spoke. His eyes were stern, but the slight curl of his lips hinted at intrigue. Nice promises, but we need proof you can deliver. Alicia leaned forward, her eyes blazing. Proof? Look at me. I built a billion-dollar tech empire from nothing. I don't make empty promises, I take action. And if you join me, the Grand Imperial will become a global legend. Silence thickened in the room. The 3 shareholders exchanged glances, their expressions shifting, softening. Alicia knew. One nod, and the gates of victory would swing wide open. The room was utterly silent, the ticking wall clock stretching every second like a drumbeat. Alicia sat firm, her gaze locked on the 3 people before her. She knew this was the make-or-break moment. One nod could change everything. Mr. Lewis took a slow sip of water, setting his glass down carefully. He spoke at last. Richard is arrogant, but to his credit, he kept the Grand Imperial alive for decades. I used to think no one could replace him. But what you've shown me, Alicia, has made me reconsider. I'll transfer my shares to you. Mrs. Grant frowned, silent for a long while. She glanced at Lewis, then back at Alicia, finally letting out a weary sigh. All my life I've believed in stability. But stability is killing us now. I won't watch my investment vanish. Mrs. Morgan, I'm with you. All eyes turned to Mr. Ortiz, the final key. He leaned back, fingers interlaced, his face carved like stone. Silence until he chuckled. You're bold, Alicia Morgan. And I like bold players. Fine, I'll join you. But remember, I don't tolerate failure. Alicia's lips curved into a proud, resolute smile. Mr. Ortiz, failure isn't part of my plan. In that instant, the balance of power shifted. With the shares of Lewis, Grant, and Ortiz, Alicia's total control surged past 50%. A thunderclap in clear skies, the Grand Imperial had officially changed hands. That night, in his lavish office at the Grand Imperial, Richard Hale sat alone with a bottle of whiskey. His face was taut, silver hair disheveled, eyes sunken. For days he had scrambled, taking on dangerous short-term loans to buy back shares. But the call from his lawyer had shattered everything. Mr. Hale, the lawyer's voice faltered. Lewis, Grant, and Ortiz, they've signed over their shares to Alicia Morgan. She now holds more than 50%. Richard froze. The glass in his hand trembled, then slipped, shattering on the floor. He slumped back into his chair, gasping as if struck in the chest. For 30 years, the Grand Imperial had been his pride, his fortress. And now it had slipped away in an instant. No. Impossible. Richard rasped, his voice broken. An outsider, a woman, could steal this from me. He roared in despair, but the sound only echoed back in the empty room. Meanwhile, across town, Alicia stood on her penthouse balcony, the night wind sweeping through her hair. Harris stepped forward and handed her a glass of champagne. "You've done it, Alicia. The Grand Imperial is yours." Alicia raised her glass, her proud gaze fixed on the brightly lit hotel in the distance. She whispered softly, like a vow, "Tomorrow the world will know. No one bars me from the door twice." The next morning the sky was brilliantly clear, as if marking a new beginning. Outside the Grand Imperial, a sea of reporters and cameras gathered, eager to witness history. Alicia Morgan, the black woman's CEO, once denied entry. Arriving not as a guest, but as the rightful owner, a sleek black limousine pulled up. Alicia stepped out in an emerald suit dress, sunlight catching her figure, making her shine like a new symbol of power. Harris followed close behind, his aging face glowing with pride. The hotel staff, many of whom had once witnessed her humiliation here, now stood lined up, bowing in welcome. Some whispered among themselves, "She's back." But this time, she owns the place. Alicia strode into the grand lobby. The sharp click of her heels echoed against the marble floor like victory drums. She stopped at the reception desk, the very spot where she had first been turned away, judged for her skin and dismissed by arrogance. A young employee bowed deeply, his voice trembling. "Welcome home to the Grand Imperial, Mrs. Morgan." Alicia smiled softly, her eyes both proud and warm. "Not homecoming. From now on, this is my house. And it will be a house for every guest who walks through these doors." Camera flashes erupted, capturing the defining moment. In that instant, Alicia felt justice realized. Once barred at the door, she now held the keys to open it for the world. The Grand Imperial's grand lobby was packed with cameras, flashes firing in constant bursts. A podium stood at the center of the lavish hall, the hotel's logo glowing brightly behind it. All eyes were on Alicia, the woman once turned away at the door, now standing at the very top. She stepped to the podium, her posture regal, commanding. No need to tap the microphone. The entire room was already breathless with anticipation. Her voice rose, warm yet powerful. "Today is not just the day the Grand Imperial changes owners. This is the day the Grand Imperial changes its vision." The hall stirred, then fell silent to listen. Alicia pressed on. "I didn't buy this hotel to own a building. I bought it to restore the true meaning of hospitality. The Grand Imperial was once a symbol of luxury, but it lost its soul. From this day forward, it will be a place where anyone, whether billionaire or worker, whether white, black, or any color, is welcomed and respected equally." Thunderous applause filled the room. Reporters nodded, one shouting, "Mrs. Morgan, do you have a concrete plan to make this promise real?" Alicia smiled, gesturing to the large screen behind her. Instantly, modern designs appeared. Guest rooms enhanced by AI, personalized services, open spaces for international cultural events. "The plan is ready. We're bringing the Grand Imperial into a new era where luxury isn't a facade, but a deeply human experience. The hall erupted in cheers and applause, cameras flashing like fireworks. In that moment, Alicia wasn't just a CEO who had won a takeover. She was the embodiment of a new future. After Alicia's speech, social media exploded like never before. The hashtag #YouNewGrandImperial shot to the #1 global trend, surpassing politics and sports. Millions of shares, tens of thousands of comments flooded in. This is real leadership. Finally, someone bold enough to redefine luxury. Alicia Morgan, the woman of a new era. While the public celebrated, inside the hotel, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Staff who once kept their heads down in fear under Richard now stood tall. A housekeeper whispered to a colleague, tears in her eyes. "I've worked here 15 years. No one ever mentioned us in the big meetings. But today," she said, "we're the heart of the hotel." I actually believe her. Even mid-level managers who had sworn loyalty to Richard began to waver. They couldn't deny the truth. The Grand Imperial was in decline. And Alicia was the only one with a strong enough plan to revive it. Outside, investors lit up the phone lines, rushing to schedule meetings for partnerships. The Grand Imperial stock price, once plummeting, suddenly surged back in less than 24 hours. From her new office, Alicia looked down at the bustling lobby, where every face glowed with hope. Harris stood beside her, smiling softly. "See? They've chosen to believe in you. You're no longer just a CEO, Alicia. You're a symbol." Alicia gripped her coffee cup, her proud gaze fixed on the horizon. "A symbol, maybe. But more importantly, I'll make the Grand Imperial a place where no one ever feels afraid to walk through its doors again." That night, the Grand Imperial shone brighter than ever. A modest ceremony was held in the grand lobby, not to flaunt wealth, but to mark the beginning of a new era. Guests came from all walks of life. Business leaders, artists, workers, students, all welcomed equally. Alicia stood on the dais, warm golden light bathing her face. She looked around the lavish hall, now alive with laughter and warmth, so different from its coldness before. Her voice rang out, heartfelt. "The day I was denied entry to this hotel, I thought it was the worst moment of my life. But that humiliation taught me something. No one decides your worth except you. Tonight, I return to the place that once closed its doors on me, not to seek revenge, but to open those doors for everyone." Thunderous applause erupted, many with tears in their eyes. A young staff member stepped forward, hand over his heart, whispering, "Thank you for giving us our pride back." Alicia smiled, raising her champagne glass high. "Together, we will rewrite the history of the Grand Imperial. From this day on, it will be more than a hotel. It will be a home of respect, compassion, and opportunity for all." Glasses clinked. Cheers roared through the hall. From a woman once humiliated, Alicia Morgan had become a symbol of strength, of change, and of justice. The Grand Imperial was no longer a fortress of arrogance. It was proof that when one door closes, another can open to an entirely new world.